Hello everybody, Rufi here with another play and explain video for you guys. This time the second part of the advanced fundamentals gameplay. Same story as last time. We'll be playing 100 NL rush and cash, and the idea is to focus on how can we escape the micros, what plays do we need to do, what plays do we need to make. Generally that will just mean we'll play solid like we normally do, exploit the recreationals, but maybe try a couple of alternative lines when we play against other regulars instead of taking the normal strategy that a lot of the other regulars will use. Without any further ado, let's just jump right into the action. In the first hand we have pocket jacks, first interesting hand. It's already quite close, but I think we can still come in for a cold 4-bet here. If the fish would get it in there with a 60 BB stack, I think we just need to stack off when you can have ace king pretty much always. Obviously we're not loving it, but with the pot odds. And if we were 100 big blind deep, we can probably just get away. We get the ace king suited, which will open up from the cutoff against a potential recreational player. Again, here I think we always need to start with a bet, trying to play for or potentially play for 3 streets of value on a lot of different runouts. We get a very quick call, which is always important to pay attention to. It could be a 5, but other than that he's capped a lot to a weaker king or a 7. So on the turn I think barreling for 75% is fine. Wouldn't hate the check back there. And we see another very quick call and a check, and now the question is, do we want to go for another street of value? He definitely improves now to king queen. He improves to king x of clubs. We need to get called by I think it's too thin to value bet here on this runout. When the queen comes in and the flush completes, he has all the ace-x backdoor flush draw that he calls on flop. King x of clubs, obviously. The only reason why we could potentially bet for value there was how quickly he called flop and turn. He may have thought about it a bit longer if he had a backdoor flush draw on the flop. It's maybe not a snap call with all of them, and then maybe he would think about leading the river occasionally, but I think the standard play is there's a bet flop, bet turn, and on this river we just have to check back. On table 2 against the wide recreational, I still don't mind starting out with a small bet. Again, another very quick call, and again I like barreling here when people call quickly, kind of telling me they don't really have a 5 very often. And also jack 10 is obviously a great potential hand. Now he calls again, quite a lot less likely. He folds an 8 now unless we go for a really big sizing, but I think we have a great hand to try it. So let's go for an overbet on the river, and we do get it through, so that's great. Obviously we have all the overpairs here that can always go for this line, and if he's an 8 or 7 he's just bluff catching, so maybe not great, and he still has lower pocket pairs, some ace-high hands. I think the ace-4 mainly just going to fold against the 3-bet, even though it's on a smaller sizing. I think with the rake it's probably best to just fold. Again, in all of these Russian cash pools, you usually want to be the one putting on the aggression and not the one calling versus aggression. Here we have a low board where we definitely need to have some checks backs, but specifically 10, I think we can go for bets here. Half pot or big bets are both fine on this board. Let's go for the big bet here. Already putting a lot of pressure on over cards, trying to stack 9s and 8s. He's deep in the tank there and ends up calling. He improves to pocket 4s with a heart, not too many combinations. 6-5 now picks up some equity. I think we just want to keep betting here. In early positions, you need to be careful not to isolate yourselves against jacks, but here he should mainly just 4-bet his jacks and better. So I think here we can still value bet somewhat comfortably. And then on brick rivers even shove, but there's not that many brick rivers in the deck. And we get now min raised on the turn. I think we just have to go with this. Definitely could have a set sometimes. But we unblock hearts, unblock a hand like 5-4 suited that he could potentially play like this. So I think we just go for this, stick it in. Obviously gonna run into set a decent amount of the time, but he's also gonna have hands like this one sometimes. And yeah, let's just hope we can hold. And this time we do. Wonderful. So that worked out well. In the other hand here we 3-bet and then check down with this hand. Anything against the min bet, I just treat it like a check, and I'm going to bluff here, as I would normally do if he would have just checked to me. So yeah, not really getting confused by his min bet there. You could definitely see with this on the flop as well. On the turn, probably stab as well, but you know, I have absolutely nothing, so I don't mind just checking back and delaying my bluff to the river, and that's what we did. And he worked out fine. Again, there with the pocket tens, obviously never a great spot when we get raised, but something that did help a lot was he tanked a lot on the flop. If he had a set, sure, he could think about raising or not on the flop as well, but very often this just means if he has a set, he maybe calls a bit quicker or raises a bit quicker. So yeah, got lucky there. Interesting spot there with a 9-8. I think he just has to fold though, to be honest, against a double barrel on the turn, facing the large sizing. King 6, not an open in theory, but this guy seems tight enough. And Queen 9 is just a fold. And then on this board, you definitely do want to see bet a lot. We kind of have the worst suits if we want to think about, well, we don't really block, we don't have a club in our hand, we don't have a spade in our hand to block some backdoor flush draws. King 7 would be better, at least having the gut shot, so I don't mind just check folding this hand. Definitely can never be a mistake in a vacuum. And it allows us to get into the delay line where, you know, he's very likely to be a bit too weak. Here in table 2, I think it's important to 3-bet recreationals wide with a very, very linear range. And not really worry about, you know, what our calling range looks like, because if they don't 4-bet us enough, we just want to get in there and 3-bet a lot of our hands. And that means probably, you know, the best 25% of hands that we could potentially have. And Queen Jack off definitely falls in there. So don't really follow charts there when you play blind to blind against a recreational. Ace 5 against the min open is a defend. Now that we are multi-way, makes it a bit worse. And 10-6 against 2.5x probably also defend. And the question is just, do I want to 3-bet this or do I just want to call it? And I think the Ace 5 multi-way is not that great, but this guy on the button could be potentially recreational. So I'm also getting involved. 10-6 against a small bet, we're obviously defending. And here we see a c-bet half pot into the recreational on a board ratio, probably just range check, so this is definitely stronger. Top and bottom, usually a good hand to just slow play. There's a lot of not so great runouts, and the 10-6 against the double barrel, just a fold. He did now check back, which is interesting, quite quickly. I think my hand pretty much just always wants to go for the overbet now on the river. I'm blocking maybe like a lot of missed draws, and then all that we can represent, and also a lot of weaker ace-x that can call us like this one, right? We know his range is strong, so definitely want to go for a bet. Check raising gets a bit thin with ace 5. If I had a hand like ace 9 or pocket 5s, I'd much more consider check raising as well as an option. But with those hands, the kind of an overbet is exactly the kind of money, the amount of money I want to put in with my hand. Once I check raise, more money goes in, and 2-pair gets quite thin. But yeah, we can definitely see that how when he was betting half pot on multi-way out of position, his range was a lot stronger. And it's important to take it to pay attention to that. Right? Let's say we had a just a random 9 there without a backdoor flush draw. We could probably just fold the flop already, given that his strong is very likely, his range is very likely to be too strong. King 10 with a recreational and a big blind. I don't mind opening this, and a 10-4 suited against a 3x open is definitely just a fold. And then unfortunately we have to fold against the 3-bet. 10-9 easy open raise, and the ace-8 also just calling. Once we get deeper, the type of hands that we want to 3-bet are usually the suited hands that play better post-flop, and less of hands like ace-8, ace-7 offsuit, king-jack, king-10 offsuit. Those hands usually become less. Goes check-check, which is interesting. On the turn flush completing, I think always important to think of your overall range, and you probably want to bet quite polarized, around 75% of pot, and then probably ace-10, ace-jack plus with a spade, and otherwise just 2 pairs and flushes, or 2 pairs and better. So I think my hand just wants to check. And then now that he goes check, the question is, can we go 75 or overbet? I think overbet is a little bit thin, but maybe okay against population. But I think 75% is the standard size there for most of our ace-x hands. And we get called by king 9, which makes a lot of sense. Checking back the flop, checking back the turn, and definitely calling the river. Once you see this type of play from your opponents, knowing that their check-back range is either air, a give up, or just bluff catchers that are worse than an ace, and the way to exploit that would be to size up here. So go actually for an overbet instead of just for 75% sizing, because your hands that in theory should maybe only have let's say like 70 to 75% equity, right? Like that type of threshold that normally goes into the 75% bet sizing can overbet if he never has a 2-pair or a better top pair that checks back flop and turn. Here the king queen, we went for forward bluff. I think that's also quite a standard candidate, and definitely once you move up in stakes, you don't want to forget those forward bluffs. Maybe at 10 and L, you shouldn't do them too much when people don't 3-bet you enough, but at 100 and L, usually people are getting quite a bit better at 3-betting. So we have to keep in mind that we also need to have some forward bluffs. 10-7-4, pretty decent board for us. We can start us with a half pot c-bet here. We already folded a lot of better ace-6 hands on the flop. Well, ace-queen probably still has to call. Ace-jack is getting close. And then on the ace turn, I think we just want to barrel a lot. It's just a really good card for us. A king or a jack would probably still would be a bit better here. And then sizing wise here, I don't mind going 40% through 70%. Anything in between there seems fine. This allows me also to bet kings, queens, and jacks on a turn still. Put a lot of pressure on his 10x already. Checking back would be an alternative line there. That's definitely okay with some of you weaker ace-x that can't always go for 3 streets. We get a splash pot, and we see an open jam from under the gun. I don't think that's really the strategy that you want to use, but I have to admit I'm not playing rush and catch outside of this video, so I don't know too much about the perfect strategy, but very often I think you just want to limp in these pots when you only jam from later positions. Opening up the ace-jack offsuit, and queen 4 again. We see this min open. Definitely cannot fold. Wouldn't hate a 3-bet here, but again, against those recreationals, I rather prefer to 3-bet a linear range and just call with hands like this one. And then here multi-way sizing maybe down from the typical half pot range to like 25 or 30% range. And the queen 4 against the half pot easy call. And with the turned open ender, we'll also just call against another bet. The ace jack, an overbet, interesting, not great, but I don't think we can go anywhere. And the ace jack is interesting where we want to bet again. It gets quite thin, but we do have the redraw, so I don't mind against a potential recreational barreling here for half pot. Getting called by king, queen, still queen, jack, still, and having the redraw, allowing me to check back rivers. Sometimes we lose against ace 10 or ace 5. And the queen 4 after the overbet. I think we now just check. We could consider betting, trying to get called by jack X of spades. Particularly, he did check quite quickly on river. But I also see him randomly checking his queen 10, queen 9 here sometimes that we lose against. And against this random lead, I'm running out of time, so I'm just pressing the call button. But I also would not have hated raising this. Not really sure what he does, but yeah. Definitely never folding against a small lead here. But didn't expect to be good that much. I had like ace 4 would make a lot of sense for his line. And yeah, interesting to see the random overbet bluff there from the recreational. Not something that you see too much. The jacks, gonna just isolate to a large sizing against the recreational. And going to check the king queen. Wouldn't hate starting to bluff there, but you know, once he checks back, I expect his range to be a lot of ace, to be very ace X heavy. And if he has air, he didn't step that on flop. I think he's going to check it back on a turn, often anyway, so we get to bluff for realize our equity a bit better. And I just prefer to just check fold instead of randomly starting to bluff when it's quite likely I run into an range that has a lot of ace X hands here on the turn. We get the snap code 4-bet from Carter to a very, very large sizing. Just going to jam this right away against this sizing and the timing. Doubt he's going to fold too much there. Yep, and there we have it. Let's see, we run it once. We need to fade the diamond on the turn and we can hold. Not sure if there's some... Oh, and the 7. And the 7 for the chop. That would be a weird way to chop it. Let's see. It's a queen, so we're good. We ship the pot there. And in the meantime, we get 3-bet against a 50 big blind stack. Someone who seems quite tight, but a small sample, so I think we just jam it in for 57 bigs or whatever that is. We have another all-in. Ace king against ace king. We need a heart, no heart. So we'll chop this one up. All right.